In 1200 AD, Cairo was the largest city on earth. Not London. Not Rome. Cairo. Over 500,000 people crowded into streets that London wouldn't match for another 600 years. Merchants, scholars, sultans, all moving through the same stone alleyways. Using AI reconstruction, we rebuilt every major district, from the Fatimid walls of 1200 to the sprawling metropolis of 2026. 8 centuries of transformation, layer by layer. Over the next 12 minutes, you'll watch Cairo rebuild itself, era by era, right in front of you. Walk with us now through the streets of medieval Cairo. The year is 1200 AD. The sun has just risen above the rooftops. And the city is already wide awake. The first thing you notice is the sound. Hundreds of voices calling, bargaining, and laughing. Metal hammers striking copper bowls. Donkeys carrying heavy loads through narrow stone passages. This was not a quiet city. This was a city that never truly slept. The streets of medieval Cairo were narrow by design. They were built to create shade. The tall stone buildings on either side blocked the harsh desert sun. Walking through them felt like moving through a cool, shaded tunnel. The ground beneath your feet was uneven stone, worn smooth by centuries of footsteps. Every few steps, a new smell hit you. Fresh bread baking in clay ovens. Raw leather being stretched and dried. Bundles of dried herbs hanging from wooden beams above open stalls. The souks, the markets, were the heart of this city. Entire streets were dedicated to a single trade. One street sold only spices. Another sold only fabric. A third sold copper and bronze tools. Merchants sat cross-legged inside their small stone stalls, surrounded by towers of goods brought from across Africa, Asia, and the Mediterranean. Women carried clay water jars on their heads, moving carefully through the crowds. Children chased each other between the legs of adult strangers. Old men sat in shaded doorways, drinking from small ceramic cups and watching the world move past them. And rising above all of this, the minarets. Tall, elegant towers of carved stone stretched into the blue sky. 5 times a day, the call to prayer echoed through every alley and every market. When it came, the city paused. Merchants stopped mid-sentence. Workers set down their tools. Families gathered in small neighborhood mosques tucked between the market stalls. This was everyday life in medieval Cairo. Not kings or battles, but bread, copper, prayer, and noise. Our AI reconstruction captures every detail. The worn stone. The crowded stalls. The faces of ordinary people living inside an extraordinary city. In 1171 AD, a new ruler took control of Cairo. His name was Saladin. And under his rule, Cairo would never look the same again. Saladin founded the Ayyubid dynasty, a period of military power, stone fortresses, and dramatic transformation. He looked at Cairo and saw a city that needed protection. So he built walls. Massive, thick walls of limestone that stretched around the entire city like a stone embrace. At the highest point of Cairo, construction began on the citadel. Workers hauled enormous blocks of stone up the rocky hillside. Hundreds of laborers worked under the burning Egyptian sun, cutting, lifting, and placing stone upon stone. Slowly, a fortress rose above the city. It could be seen from every direction. It told everyone, friend and enemy alike, that Cairo was now a protected and powerful capital. But life inside those walls was not all soldiers and swords. Step inside the city during the Ayyubid era and you find ordinary families living ordinary lives. Women ground wheat into flour using heavy stone mills. The smell of freshly baked flatbread drifted through open doorways each morning. Men gathered at neighborhood wells, pulling up clay pots filled with cool water from deep below the ground. Children grew up in tight stone alleyways. They knew every turn, every shortcut, every shaded corner. Their world was small, just a few streets, a local mosque, and the familiar faces of neighbors they had known their entire lives. Soldiers moved through the city in small groups. Their iron armor caught the sunlight. They patrolled the gates, inspected arriving caravans, and kept order in the busy markets. But even they stopped to buy bread and dried figs from the stalls they passed every day. This is what power looked like in 1200s Cairo. Not just fortresses and armies, but stone mills, clay pots, and flatbread cooling on windowsills. Our AI reconstruction rebuilds this world in full detail. The citadel rising above dusty rooftops. The crowded alleyways below. And the quiet, steady rhythm of everyday Ayyubid life continuing just beneath the shadow of its great walls. In 1250 AD, a new power took control of Cairo. They were called the Mamluks. And under their rule, Cairo would reach the greatest heights of its entire history. The Mamluks were originally soldiers, trained warriors brought from Central Asia and the Caucasus region. But once they seized power, they did something unexpected. They became builders. Passionate, ambitious, and almost obsessive builders. They looked at Cairo and saw not just a city, but a canvas. And they filled that canvas with some of the most breathtaking architecture the medieval world had ever seen. Walk through Cairo during the Mamluk era and the skyline takes your breath away. Towering minarets pierce the blue sky from every direction. Massive stone domes, perfectly shaped and intricately carved, sit above grand mausoleums and mosques. The stone itself seems to tell stories. Geometric patterns, floral designs, and Arabic calligraphy cover every surface with extraordinary precision. These were not simple structures. They were statements. Each building announced the power, the faith, and the ambition of the sultan who built it. But step away from the grand monuments and into the side streets, and a different Cairo reveals itself. Craftsmen worked in small stone workshops, producing goods that traveled across the entire known world. Glassblowers shaped molten material into delicate vessels. Weavers produced fine linen and silk fabrics on wooden looms that clattered rhythmically through the afternoon heat. Metalworkers hammered intricate patterns into brass and bronze trays that would eventually reach the tables of merchants in Venice, Baghdad, and Timbuktu. Every single day, caravans arrived at Cairo's gates. Loaded camels carried gold from West Africa, spices from the Indian Ocean trade routes, and ivory from deep within the continent. Cairo sat at the very center of the medieval world's trading network. Goods from 3 continents passed through its markets daily. For nearly 300 years, this city was the undisputed heart of Islamic civilization. Its scholars produced books. Its craftsmen produced masterpieces. Its merchants connected the entire world. Our AI reconstruction rebuilds this golden age in full. The carved stone facades. The crowded caravan routes. The workshops humming with skilled hands. This was Cairo at its most alive, and its most beautiful. In January 1517, Ottoman soldiers marched through the gates of Cairo. The Mamluk era was over. And Cairo would never quite be the same again. The Ottoman Empire was vast, stretching from the borders of Persia all the way to the edges of Europe. Cairo was now just one city inside that enormous empire. An important city. A wealthy city. But no longer the center of anything. Power had moved north, to Constantinople. And Cairo felt that shift almost immediately. The grand building project stopped. For nearly 300 years under the Mamluks, Cairo had been constantly growing, new mosques rising, new markets opening, new caravans arriving. Now that energy quietly disappeared. The sultans who had competed to build the most magnificent structures were gone. The new Ottoman governors had their own capital to serve. Cairo was now managed, not celebrated. Walk through Cairo in the 1600s and the changes are visible everywhere. The great Mamluk mosques still stand, but their stone is darkening with age. Cracks appear in carved facades that no one rushes to repair. Entire sections of once busy markets grow quieter as trade routes slowly shift away from Cairo toward new ocean paths discovered by European sailors. The caravans still come, but fewer of them. The workshops still operate, but with less demand than before. Ordinary families feel these changes in small, daily ways. A spice merchant notices that fewer foreign buyers visit his stall each season. A craftsman who once exported his brass work across 3 continents now sells mostly to local customers. A young man who might have found work in a grand construction project instead repairs old buildings that are slowly crumbling. The streets are still crowded. The mosques are still full. The call to prayer still echoes 5 times each day across the rooftops. But something has shifted. A quiet stillness has settled over the city. The energy that once made Cairo the most exciting place on earth is slowly, almost invisibly, fading away. Our AI reconstruction captures this painful transition. The darkening stone. The quieter markets. The grand buildings standing tall, but beginning, very slowly, to be forgotten. By the early 1800s, Cairo stood at a crossroads. The old city was still there, its narrow stone streets, its crumbling Mamluk facades, its ancient wells and crowded alleyways. But powerful new forces were gathering around it. And those forces would reshape Cairo more dramatically than anything in its previous 6 centuries. It began with demolition. Entire neighborhoods that had stood since the medieval period were torn down. Ancient stone streets, streets that had carried the footsteps of merchants, scholars, and ordinary families for hundreds of years, were broken apart and widened. The logic was simple. The old city was considered too narrow, too crowded, and too difficult to manage. So it was systematically dismantled, block by block, quarter by quarter. Walk through Cairo in the mid-1800s and the transformation is jarring. On one side of a street, a magnificent Mamluk mosque still stands, its carved stone facade darkened with centuries of dust and age. On the other side, that same street has been completely rebuilt. New construction rises where ancient homes once stood. The scale feels wrong. The proportions feel foreign. The city is being pulled in 2 directions at once, between what it was and what it is being forced to become. Ordinary families bear the heaviest weight of this transformation. A family that has lived in the same stone house for 6 generations receives word that their neighborhood will be demolished. They gather their clay pots, their woven rugs, and their handmade furniture, and they leave. The house that sheltered their grandparents and great-grandparents is reduced to rubble within days. Another family watches as the ancient well they have drawn water from their entire lives is sealed and buried beneath new construction. By 1950, the medieval fabric of Cairo has been severely damaged. Entire districts that once defined the city have disappeared completely. Streets that appeared on centuries-old maps no longer exist. The sounds, the smells, and the rhythms of medieval Cairo, the copper hammers, the spice stalls, the shaded stone alleyways, survive only in fragments. Our AI reconstruction stands at this moment of loss and asks a critical question. What exactly was destroyed? What did those vanished streets look like? Who lived inside those demolished homes? The reconstruction does not just show buildings. It restores the human lives that those buildings once contained, and makes visible what time and demolition worked so hard to erase. After 8 centuries of transformation, Cairo still stands. But the city that exists today carries deep wounds. Wounds that are invisible to most people walking through its streets. Wounds that only become visible when you place the past and the present side by side. That is exactly what this AI reconstruction does. Our technology begins with what survived. Hidden inside the dense fabric of modern Cairo, fragments of the medieval city still exist. An ancient stone gateway standing between 2 newer buildings. A carved Mamluk facade preserved almost accidentally behind centuries of dust. A narrow alleyway that somehow escaped demolition, its worn stone floor still carrying the exact curve it had in 1300 AD. These surviving fragments become our anchors. Our fixed points. The pieces from which the reconstruction rebuilds outward. From those anchors, the AI restoration begins its work. Vanished streets reappear. Stone by stone, alleyway by alleyway, the medieval city reassembles itself across the screen. The souks return, crowded with copper merchants, spice traders, and fabric sellers. The Ayyubid walls rise again above dusty rooftops. The Mamluk minarets climb back into the sky with their intricate carved detail fully restored. The city that faded away over 8 centuries is made whole again, not as a fantasy, but as a historically grounded reconstruction built from archaeological evidence, medieval manuscripts, and careful scholarly research. But the reconstruction does not stop at buildings. It restores the people. A woman carries a clay water jar through a narrow shaded alleyway in 1250 AD. A craftsman carefully hammers a geometric pattern into a brass tray in his small stone workshop. A scholar walks slowly through a candlelit corridor, carrying a handwritten book pressed against his chest. A child chases a stray cat between the legs of market crowds on a busy Friday morning. These are the moments that history books rarely capture. The quiet, ordinary, deeply human moments that made Cairo one of the greatest cities the world has ever produced. Our AI reconstruction preserves those moments. It builds a bridge, not just between ancient stone and modern streets, but between the people who lived then and the people watching now. 8 centuries collapse into a single screen. And Cairo, in all its crowded, noisy, breathtaking glory, lives again.